Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with Monday Special. Tonight we're asking whether the youth have lost the values that guide them in society. Remember to use the hashtag Monday Special KE on Twitter or text us on 22422. But first I'll introduce you to my panelists tonight. I'll start on my left. On my far left we have James Kimathi, who would describe himself as someone who is living a life more or less on the straight and narrow. He's chosen to remain closely attached to the values in the Kenyan society. And then we have Dr. Pete Odera. Probably really know him well as a musician, an award-winning musician, but he's also a pastor and a youth mentor. He'll tell us about his own experiences talking to young people over the years about value systems. Then we have Ibrahim Said. Ibrahim Said is an atheist, and he'll tell us why he's chosen that particular path and what his thoughts are on our value systems in Kenya. And then we have Soila Cole, who is... I asked her if I can call her socialite. She said it's okay. She's a socialite. She's someone who enjoys life, enjoys the good life, and she'll tell us a little bit about whether or not value systems are relevant to young women like her. Thank you all so much for coming.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for inviting us.
Maybe I'll start with you, Dr. Odera, because it would be good to first establish these value systems. You've mentored youth for many years. You've worked with them for a long time. You've also understood value systems in Kenya. Maybe I can start by asking, what do you understand by value systems when we say value systems?
Value systems are those things that drive our belief. Our belief, many people get it wrong. We start with behavior, and so we want to change our children's behavior. But we don't. We move from the place of behavior. The root of behavior is my belief. My belief is driven by my values. Value systems are those things by which we gauge our morality, or our what drives us, what drives my my ambition or whatever it is for success. So that's, I mean, primarily what it is. You know, just on the from a starting point.
From a starting point. What do you think some of our value systems are as a country, even from what you've experienced as being someone who spent a lot of time in church and then interacting with other people? What would you generally say some of our value systems are?
I think for the most part we like to say that we are a Christian nation, but the reality is the foundation of much of what we count as values, some of that came from our African traditions. The many different tribal or clan ideas that were there that preserved the way we were and the life that we lived. This is what brought up much of the ideas that many of us hold on to. That was now, what happened is the Christian faith was then superimposed on that. If you're closer to the coast, you've had the Islamic views and values that were superimposed on that. And so that's really what's driving us now. But throw into the mix the values that are now being imposed to us through the media, which are mainly Western values of freedom, some kind of idea of what freedom really is in a democracy, on a quote-unquote advanced,
more liberal, so to speak.
More liberal, in an I'd like to say quote-unquote advanced society. This is how people feel, and this is what people deal with regard to values. So this is what's affecting our young people today.
In fact, let me jump in before I speak to the rest of our panelists and bring them into this. Do you feel as though young people in Kenya, because this is really the perception, this is actually what inspired this show tonight, that a lot of young people have completely pulled away from these values or disregarded them or decided to just form their own views on what works for them and how they should live their life. From your experience dealing with a lot of young people, do you feel like youth have lost their way? Do you think can we call youth a lost generation in Kenya?
I don't know if I want to call it lost generation, because that already says that I've given up hope on this generation. What I really do believe, though, is that the difference between, for example, our parents, my parents' generation and the present generation is that there was a system by which values were passed on in the generations past. There was always a system by which values were passed on. And the reason for these values was very clear. And so the parameters and the boundaries with which people govern themselves in society was very clear. But we don't have that clarity now. And because there's no clear way of passing on these these values from one generation to another. What we have is a generation that's grown up, and for many of them it's just the Wild West. You know, you have people who've grown up with different parenting systems and so on. And so in a way, it's very difficult for young people to gauge and say, these are my values, because they weren't passed on. It wasn't necessarily properly modeled to the present generation.
All right, that's a good way of putting it. We'll come to you just now, James. Let me turn to Ibrahim and Soila. Let me start with you. Our value systems, have they ever been relevant for you in terms of, and really sometimes it's hard to separate even religion and values. I think that's what we can say. But value systems in Kenya, would you say that they're an important part of your own life?
Okay, in my own life, like I like partying, because you called me a socialite when you were starting the show. Okay, I can party from Monday to Monday, but I get paid for it. So I don't see how I can spend my time from 8 to 5 p.m. in the office, whereas I can be paid a lot more when I'm doing my thing and I'm having fun. So to me, the values don't really count. As long as I'm living my life and I'm having a lot of fun and I'm having what I want, I'm all good with it.
So do people ever look at you and say, what you're doing is wrong, what you're doing is immoral? Have you had people say that to you before?
People will always be there. It's that percentage you are negative. They'll always be negative. And those, they are called haters. They'll always say what you're doing is wrong, you're not supposed to do this. But I don't think we're supposed to judge anyone. We're supposed, if someone is having a good time, is having her own life, we're supposed to just leave them be. Let them be.
That's what you think? So maybe some people don't understand, and I know there's been a lot of questions about socialites in Kenya, for example. So what, you get paid to do appearences? Is that what you said?
I get paid to get parties, some events, modeling. I get paid to do that.
And for you, when you look at the traditions and values that have been there in Kenya from before, the moral fabrics and everything, do you get concerned that a part of you is you're going to lose your way in life and fall deeper into sin, for example, and you don't feel scared of that? You don't feel afraid that in future all this will catch up with you?
No, I don't feel afraid. When I was young, I was like, I want to be super rich when I grow up. I didn't know how I'll get it, but I wanted just to be super rich. I want to be famous. I want to have all those good things in life.
And how old were you when you decided that?
I was like in primary school, and I was watching the soap operas, and I was seeing those girls living a good life. I was like, I want to be like them. And since I'm living like them, I'm all good.
So now you're good? Okay, interesting. Again, before I come to Ibrahim, let me bring James into this discussion. You've heard what Soila is saying. She kind of lives her life and does her own thing. Value systems are neither here nor there. What is it for you? What about you?
For me, is what informs my value system. And majorly, in my current day and age, what informs the value systems of what people uphold. Because from the word value, I understand value means something that takes priority. So what takes priority in my life is what matters the most. And that which takes priority in my life, as I was sharing earlier with Pastor Pet, is pleasing God. And so it takes me back to the origin of man himself.
All right. Do you disagree with the kind of lifestyle, for instance, Soila and other women like her live? Do you think that what she does, she's someone who's making her own money, she's modeling, she's making appearances. Do you think that there's a disconnect there between what she does and value systems in Kenya?
In Kenya, I will not be very certain about it, because we are taking another trend as a nation. But as per what I would call the rock of ages, where we have been hewn from, because we have originated from somewhere. We are an idea in God's mind. Actually, in actual sense, I would be quick to say the earth and the world was not supposed to be there. It's a thought of God. If God thought that the earth would not be there, then we will not be here. So to me, I think, this is what I think actually, personally, is you can rate your value systems as per your surrounding, but let's go back to our manufacturer. What does he think about us?
Does that make sense to you? And at this point, I know I'll bring in Ibrahim. Does what he's saying resonate to you in any way?
Okay, I am not an atheist as Ibrahim is. I believe God does exist, but He just don't bless you from just sitting down. You have to work. You have to go out there and do something for yourself, and then He bless you from there. That's why I'm out here doing something with what He created. He created me, and I appreciate my body. That's why I do what I do, because He blessed me from there.
Okay, interesting. Let's bring you in now. First and foremost, for the sake of some of our viewers, who is an atheist?
Basically, an atheist is someone who lacks belief in either a god or gods. That's the definition of an atheist.
But you've not always been that kind of person?
Not really, because I was raised up in a really religious family, if I may say. But you see, when you grow up, you start questioning these things. You're like, how did all this come to be? Like, you see, the problem with us humans is that we wake up believing in something that others have been believing in for years and years. And it leads us in a path that's not really right. Yeah. Because if you look into religion, Christianity, Islam, all of them, they're always talking about persecution. Most part of it, it's persecution, judging others. I believe you shouldn't judge, like let's say her. You shouldn't judge someone based on how you see him, because there's something deeper that you are not able to see.
Yeah. What made you make that decision, though? Was there a certain moment in life when you thought there's things that didn't make sense to you?
Yeah, you see, the thing with Christians, okay, let me not say that. The thing with religious people, they're like, you didn't study the Bible well to become all this. I'm like, no. The reason I became an atheist is because I've read the Bible so much, and the more that I'm reading is the more that it just gets into my mind. If at all there's a God, by which there's none, but if at all there's a God, then He's one cruel God.
Okay, can I just bring in value systems at this point before I hear from, Dr. Odera? Do you then have value systems?
Of course, as a human you must have values. I mean,
so what informs your value systems?
It all depends on me. You know what's right, what's wrong. You just have it set in your mind. You're like, no, don't do this, it's wrong. You can do this, it's right. Yeah.
What do you think happens when we die?
When we die, that's the end of it.
Nothing else?
Nothing.
Okay. Let's bring you in.
Right.
Just to kind of respond to what he's saying.
This is interesting. I think what we're seeing with Saidi, who's just became my friend on Facebook, and Soila, is actually what I said before. I'm finding a trend more and more now as I meet up with young people. What's driving us seems to be the desire to become significant, and significance nowadays is determined by money. Certainly our urban Nairobi and our urban position is that that's what happens, and so I feel that for many people we're finding that our value system, you look at somebody and judge them not based on who they are. I think Saidi was trying to allude to that. Judging them not based on who they really are, the content of their character, but we're judging them based on what they can either give us or what they have. What they have basically is, I have this, and so I can get from them this. And I think that's a little bit upside down. And I want to kind of agree with James a little bit, that we're created for a purpose. I mean, there's a reason why we're put on the earth and so on. And so for me, I'm going to say that we are a product. I was saying to James a little earlier, we're a product of our environment. I cannot say I became who I have become because I just emerged and became. That's independent thinking, and no man is an island. The reality is we are a product of our society. So Ella is a product of the society that she is embedded in, and I think that this is something we have to face. I was having a conversation with a musician who, at the time I was working in a music production thing, and they said to me, I said to them, this is our music, in reference now to Nameless and Juakali and some of the guys, and this was about maybe 10-15 years ago, and they were coming out and they were new, and the artist said, no, this is not our music, this is I said, no, you have to understand that these are, this is the Fadhili Williams and Fundi Konde of our day, and what they're bringing is a product of their environment. It is a mongrel of what they've heard on TV, what they've grown up with, and what these systems have informed them. So when you find someone like Saidi, many pastors get intimidated and say, okay, he doesn't believe. He's a product of the environment that we, and what have we demonstrated to Saidi and to Soila? We've demonstrated that even in church, we really don't have to believe, because many churches then become a business. And so then it becomes about money. And I found myself in the situation where I'm going to say to somebody and they say, oh, you're a pastor. Oh, you must make a lot of money. And so the system has forced us into thinking that everything is about money. It isn't. It isn't. What happened? Did I get my kids because I wanted money? Well, some people are like that. If I get 4 girls, then I can get bride price for them, and it'll be better for me. So our system has slowly disintegrated the place where we denigrate people, we dehumanize people, and this is what we call materialism. And so from a philosophical perspective, I think this is part of the problem that we've become, outside of the Western world, a westernized materialistic society. That's what we've become, unfortunately.
We're about to take a short break, but I'd like to hear your responses on what he's just said. Has the face of perhaps religion and church discouraged you or dissuaded you from wanting to be a part of that? Would you say that would you agree with what he's saying? Like maybe that's what you're seeing and that's what you're adapting to. Maybe I can start with you.
To me, like, a lot of churches nowadays, they are hypocrites, because like everyone is setting up churches to get money from it. And I like to disagree with Pastor Odera, because like you need money to have a good life. Like your children, you can't just take them to just another primary school. You have to take them to an academy where they can get a better education. But you have to have good money for that.
So money is really important to you?
It's really important.
This is precisely what I'm saying.
Yeah.
This is precisely what I'm saying.
Because that's what she's seeing and that's what's informing. What about for you? Was part of it that? Did you become jaded by religion because of what you saw happening?
Exactly. Like, let's talk about today. We were just watching the news and there was this story about this religious leader selling girls to go and be sex slaves. You see, at the end of the day, you're looking at it and you're like, these are the people who are supposed to be guiding us, and they're leading us into a path that doesn't really make sense at the end of the day. So yeah, religious, it has caused so many troubles, wars, hunger and stuff. At the end of the day, it doesn't really help. It all depends on yourself. If you want to survive, you just have to help yourself. Don't depend on churches, don't depend on mosque and all that. You just live for yourself.
All right, we'll come back. I know we also need to go into, if we take that view, what can then that do to society? I think it would be good to discuss that. We'll be right back after this break. Remember to talk to us on Monday Special KE. That's the hashtag on Twitter, or text us on 22422. We'll be back after this break. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with Monday Special, where we're talking about youth and value systems. Let's now take a look at some of your feedback that was coming up right there on Twitter. Let's see what some of you are saying on Twitter right now. If we can bring that on your screens. All right, there we go. Mark Darkus says, parents claim that they're too busy, therefore they have no time to share time rather with their youth and children. And then at Eric Kogi says, our society is no longer sober. We have youth competing against wrong things so that they look superior to their peers. James Palando says, yeah, today's youth have lost values due to not spending enough time with parents, but learning mostly from negative media. And then at Alex Owiti says, modernity, my goodness, English gets hard as you get older, and relativism has destroyed the fabric of morality and value systems. Okay, so certain things coming up there, such as the media, and this is where I can maybe bring in, James and Dr. Odera. How much do you think media is influencing how young people are adopting to values or their own values in society?
Probably I would start with media and how it's influencing our society. One person said, after you have locked your big gate and the door to your house, remember that the greatest door is laying just in front of you in a special place, well lifted. It's called the television. That is the greatest door. and it's letting in every kind of influence that people are having. We have a society whereby parents are not spending time with their young people, with their children, to teach them values. And at specific times, actually, there is a catch for the young people as they are coming from school, and there are things that are being sold to them. They look like they are the real thing, and people have adopted kind of nature and a lifestyle informed by how they are seeing people acting on the television. Some of these things are like, let's talk of reality shows. To the normal average listener or viewer to that very show, they will look at the reality show as if it has not been script manipulated. But these things have been script manipulated, and they want to act them live in their lives just as they are.
So you also mentioned something interesting, which I'll just read a text here from Catherine. You don't say where you're from, but you say it's not really the youth that have lost their values, it's the family, and parents have just thrown their roles out of the window, because you mentioned parents. So for you, that's also a concern, that parents are not spending enough time and trying to pass on these value systems.
That's very true. I think that's the bullseye. He's just hit the bullseye, because if parents could inform their children of the values they have been getting from their forefathers and forefathers, I think we would not be having a stray kind of community
that we're seeing today.
Let me just allude to my most informative book, which is the Bible, which I uphold with all esteem. When you read the book of Deuteronomy chapter 6, it says, when you sit at seat or at table with your children, please teach them these laws, teach them these guidelines, teach them to honor God, teach them to know that there is only one God, Elohim God, and to value that. Let them write the laws on their forehead, let them put them on their palms, let them walk around reciting the law, so that they can build a value system that is godly.
All right. I'll come to you just now. Let me come to you, Soila. Growing up, were some of these things emphasized to you at any point? Was, you know, like the way James is saying, for instance, your parents being able to guide you or walk with you or tell you what they feel are important value systems to you? Did you grow up around that at all?
Yeah, I did. Actually, when I was young, I used to go to church like every Saturday for practice and Sunday for the service. But after I'm 18, I'm supposed to choose. I'm supposed to choose my ways. If I choose to do this, that's my own decision. If I choose to do the other, that's my own decision. So when a person is 18 years, they're supposed to be left to choose what they want to do. Because if you brought them up well, they're supposed now to act on their own will.
But did somewhere along the way, what is it that made you say, this is now what's important to me? I want to be able to make good money, eventually have kids and take them to the best schools and drive the best cars. I know you mentioned that when you were in primary school, you used to watch soap operas and say, I want to live like them. Was that the point that you began to say, I think I'd rather live this life than live a life where I'm going to spend all my time or all my weekends in church? What point was that?
You know, there's this professor, I can't remember if it's a Saimara professor, it's a lady. She said that education rewards you for your memory, but it doesn't mean that you'll be the best. You can be the best in class, but it doesn't mean you'll be the best in life. But life rewards you for your creativity. So you have to get out there and be creative on your own way and find a way to survive. It's a competitive world. You have to survive. So you have to do your own thing.
Okay. What about for you? Growing up, those value systems, did you have them around you with your parents? Did they talk to you about what values were important for them, and did you adopt any?
Yeah, actually, while growing up, I really had awesome parents. My mom is still awesome as usual. They taught me what was right and what was wrong. It's not like they weren't there to guide me and all that. They were always there. They were like, if you do this, this will be the consequences. If you do this, this will be the rewards. So, and like what many viewers are saying right now, I wouldn't really blame it on the family or the parents on guiding their children. It's all about what yourself you choose to be. So that's the problem with us Kenyans. We're always looking for someone to put the blame on.
I like what you're saying. And there was a story. That story was interesting. And, I'm sure we've heard it. The child went to school. Who was responsible for the child getting pregnant out of wedlock or what have you? Something like that. And they say, no, we thought the teachers would tell them. The teacher said, no, we thought the parents would tell them. The parents said, no, we thought the pastor would tell. The pastor said, I thought you taught this to your kids at home. I think we're becoming a society that wants to absolve ourselves of responsibility. And I like what Soila said. At 18, we should be allowed
to make our choices.
Here's my question. Is our generation being equipped, given all the right tools to be able to make the kind of informed choice that will say this is what life will reward you with? Is it fair to allow a young girl like Soila to go out there and hustle with the rest of the world and feel like the entire world is exploitative when that's only one very narrow perspective of what the world really is? Is it fair that somebody who could have been religiously brought up like Saidi would end up being angry about the religious system, something that's supposed to bring values and joy? Something was wrong with the systems that allowed this thing, and I feel that some of that has to do with, certainly I want to take part of that responsibility as a man of the cloth. People come to me and say, Pastor Pete, it's a hustle out there. I was in Kibera the other day just walking around in the slum and looking around and said, people live like this. Can I tell the people who live in this slum the exact same thing I'd say to the person that I meet at a swanky restaurant and expect them to live? Last week we had these girls, teenage girls, surrendering guns with this gang called Gaza. Why would a teenage girl say to her mentors, whoever it is, that, you know what, I'm going to be a gangster, I'm going to be big time, and display it on Facebook and say, I don't care what you think, my life is short, but it's sweet. Something's wrong with that value system there. And it could be that we have refused to really engage the young person where they need to be, and now live a life that is transparent. If Saidi would come, if he would come and walk in my life and say, you know what, this guy is a little bit more transparent, I'd rather believe him. And this is part of the problem, is that we've also then created around us, many pastors, many people who are leaders in society have created this world around their gilt-edged ivory tower with all this, and with bodyguards and all stuff. You never touch me.
Inaccessible and
inaccessibility. And if you're lucky, if you pray hard enough, if you struggle hard enough, you'll become like me. Instead of giving people the tools and saying, hey, listen, this is how to make an informed decision. This is how to marry the right person.
I want to come back to you before we wind up and find out what do you think we need to start doing? What kind of language do you think we need to start speaking to get through? And I'll come to James as well. Let me come back to you again, Soila. Do you think that when you're much older, with family, with children, that you'll find it okay if they also decide to live the life that you've chosen to live?
Yeah, I can find it okay if they are okay with it, sure. Because I chose to live like this, and people should be okay with it because it's my decision. So if my kids decide to live the same life, I'll be okay with it because that's their decision. But I'll tell them about the consequences and the rewards. But if they choose to live the same life, that's their decision.
If everything was taken away from you, the money, the growing fame and everything, how would that make you feel? Do you think you'd be able to pick yourself up and take your life in another direction?
Yeah, I can, because I'm also a student. So my life is not wholly on this other part of life. I'm also in school. So if all this can be taken away, I still can grow.
I think if I can interject on what Soila is saying, I tend to believe there are people who are living well and existing well, not because they pursued money, but because they pursued values. The Bible says, seek ye the kingdom of God first, and his righteousness, and then all these other things shall be added unto you. So I think I'm just posing it as a challenge to Soila. If you can be able to look this thing on the other side of the coin, seek values, and let values bring wealth and treasure, because God really wants to bless you. God really wants to enlarge you. He has not created you to cause you to go down or to be ashamed. Actually, he says, none of mine shall be ashamed. If you seek him rather than seeking these things, I think it's a blessed hope. You will not crash or come crumbling down when these things go, because they are fleeting and they are passing.
But James, I do have a question.
Yes.
Is there a specific blessing for a specific person? Why can't you say whatever I'm doing, that's my blessing, that's where my blessing is coming from? Because
we do not own ourselves. It would be one thing to think that you are self-existing. You just wake up and breathe by yourself.
Yeah.
Understand? So we owe our lives to somebody. We owe our lives to the supreme God, Yahweh, Jehovah. So he has a blessing for us.
Yeah.
He has created you for a reason. That was established by Pastor Pet. We have been created for a purpose and for a reason. And where there is a purpose, where there is a vision, God offers a provision. It might not be seen then. You understand it?
Yeah.
I never saw myself here. You never saw yourself where you are right now. But you're here. I mean, there's very many other people that would have wanted to be in this place. But by his own way, by his own will, he has brought us here. So I think the best thing to do is to depend on he who has the map and the blueprint of our lives.
But when we were starting the show, I said I'm not an atheist. I believe there's God.
Well, maybe
but
the atheist should speak.
Yeah, I wanted her to respond before I let Saidi come in.
Yeah. But I know the Bible too, because I was brought up in a religious family.
Yes.
In the same Bible that you stand up with, it says that God doesn't just bless you. You just can't fold your arms and just wait for blessings to come. You have to go out there and work for blessings to come. So I'm out here working, and so God is blessing me.
That's what I'm saying. Seek the will of God.
All right, let's hear from Ibrahim.
Actually, she's actually said what I wanted to say. Because the same Bible that you have quoted is the same Bible that says, don't be lazy like the ants. Go out there, work. But you're telling us to depend, to just sit comfortably, pray, and hope that everything will be okay at the end of the day. That doesn't work. You see, when I was young, I always believed.
Let me say, I never said you be lazy.
Yeah. It's okay. Yeah. When I was young, I always believed in something. Pray and it shall be given. But then I realized God doesn't work that way. If at all, this one, God doesn't work that way. So what you do is you go out there. You steal that bike. I'm not encouraging anyone to go out and steal something, but you go out there, steal that bike, and pray for repentance. That's how this world is. You go out there, take what's yours. You don't just sit there comfortably and wait. My mama always said, God helps those who help themselves. She's actually a very religious person, but then, so what she's trying to tell her is, to me, it just doesn't make sense.
So you're saying you need to go out there and claim what's yours?
Yeah.
Irrespective of the consequences?
No. Don't get me wrong. Don't get it twisted. I'm saying as long as you're doing it in the right way.
And what is the right way? Because when you're saying that the values kind of come from you, because you're saying you define your values, you define what works for you. How do you know where the lines begin to get blurred between what's right and wrong in society? For you as Ibrahim, how do you decide that?
You see, not like I'm trying to judge her or anything, but there are things that as much as you believe in yourself, you want to go out there and get everything that you want, there's some things that you just can't do. Like, as much as they start fame, they start money, there's a limit to everything. Because at the end of it all, there are consequences and stuff. But you also have to work towards yours. That's it. You just have to work towards yours.
I would want to ask, what informs the limit?
That's a hard one.
As you think about it, let's hear from...
Said is not really an atheist, he's an agnostic now.
Yes.
He moved a little closer because he's talking about...
I was only quoting my mother.
Okay, great. No. You're just... I think you're proselytizing a little bit. Listen, I think it's interesting what we're saying, but what I think, because you said that we need to go to what are the solutions, what are the answers that we come to. And I think that what these young people have done is have pragmatized their personal answers to deal with their reality. Implanted or incarnated in a different environment, I'm almost opined to think that they would act differently. And I think that this is the thing that takes me back to that whole place of modeling. How do we model? How can I find somebody who can identify? And I like what James is saying, but sometimes what I found that from a pastor's perspective, I think these kids already know. Oh, sorry, I didn't get
These adults.
Terrible.
But that's all right.
Terrible.
We know where you're coming from. We know where you're coming from.
These young people, they've been in a religious background, so they know what James is saying. But the trouble with many young people I'm finding is there's a disconnect. There's a disconnect between, okay, what you're saying is true, but my reality is so different. What do I do? And I think that the problem is that many times what is being said is not coupled with a modeling or a system by which I can walk out what it is that I believe. She's pragmatized what she says. She says, you know what, I gotta hustle. I gotta hustle, man, it's not gonna come to me. But what is hustling? Maybe another name for it is hard work. Where does the hard work ethic come from? Isn't that a biblical principle? You know, Saidi said something about, you know, my mom believed, hey, hang on a second, that's respect for that's honoring your parents. Isn't that a biblical principle in the 10 Commandments as well? So I think that essentially what they're doing is trying to find a practical way to practicalize the truths that they know.
Yeah.
These are not bad young people. I look at them, they're okay. You know? But the reality is, though, is that the question, I think, which you raised at the beginning is, where's the beginning of the moral? How do we really deal with moral questions? Some of the things we're dealing with, we just saw an article, a couple of articles in the news just now, that are troubling.
Very.
And the question we begin to ask is, where's the line? How do we deal? How do I demonstrate love, yet disagree with the moral conduct of a person?
Yeah.
These are some of the questions that the young people today are asking. And if we can give them solid answers and say, hey, listen, and I think part of the answer has to be that we need to mentor and model something, be willing to be the one who somebody looks at and says, oh, I get it. I get it, I get it. This is how somebody gets married. This is how somebody starts a business. This is how somebody fails.
So you just mentioned mentorship, because I was going to say, as we begin to wind up, where do we need to go back to? If we've agreed that young people have decided they're going to live their lives based on what they know, not so much based on the value systems, how do we, if we feel it's important, get them back to that place? So you mentioned mentorship.
Certainly.
What other way? Someone who's sitting at home. There could be someone who's sitting watching this and saying, I'm a young person, I do believe in these certain value systems, but I'm starting to feel a bit lost and jaded and confused. I do kind of just want to take my own direction in life. Where do you think someone like that needs to start digging or needs to start doing to maybe find their path again back to those value systems?
My first response, certainly, I'd say that one of the central things, again, is back to mentorship. Mentorship is a very modern word for an ancient word that was apprenticeship. Apprenticeship is another word for discipleship. And really what it is to take somebody's hand and say, the word disciple really just means a disciplined one, and discipline somebody in something that they were going to grow up in. And I think that that's what we need to do and say, listen, this girl could be a model. Is there a place for modeling in our belief system? And if there is a place, how can we redeem what it seems to be lost and say, here's an example of a model who's living with an upright standard. And this is what I'm saying, because I have daughters. I have daughters, and this is what they see. And I sit down and say to them, you can be anything. What is that anything? And I think we must, modeling and mentoring. I like what James said again, bringing somebody back to a base. And I think I want to start to answer one of Saidi's questions. And he said something. He said, you asked, so what is that value system based on? And he said, that's a tough one. Well, there are some ancient boundaries, and we come back to what he said. There's a Bible. Search it. Begin to search and say, and this is why I allow people to question and say, you don't believe? That's okay by me. If you search and you're sincere in your search, you'll find the truth.
Yeah. Can I ask you, do you have any role models? Are there people that you aspire to be like, that people that inspire you?
Yeah, as I said, when I was little, I used to...
What about now?
Yeah, I do have those. Like, I can want to be like the Kim Kardashians, who have so many followers. They have a sense of fashion. I can like to be like those because they are well up. They are not complaining about anything. So I can like to be like them.
That we know of. They're not complaining about anything that we know of. And for us, I think that, having been in the media, in the media and 25 years, people come to me from the music industry, and their face looks good. But I've talked to people who are I've met award-winning people. I had dinner once with a Dove Award-winning artist These guys were traveling all over the world, sat next to him, and I said, man, this was a lot earlier. I sat next to him and saying, man, I'm sitting with this guy at dinner. I want to be like him. I was just about to say to him, how do you? And then he just burst out in tears, and I said, okay, what's going on here? And then he said, you know what? I'm not sure I want to go home because I'm going home and my wife is going to divorce me and my life is falling apart. So sometimes we don't see, because reality TV has deceived us into thinking this is TV, this is not who I really am. When I'm going home, I'm not Dr. Pete, I'm Dad. You know, Dad, help me with my homework. No, I'm busy, I need a makeup session. No, I gotta help the girl with the homework. So for me, I think part of it is to be a little more realistic and say, maybe I need somebody, maybe I need a Janet Mbogwa whose hand I can hold and say, how do you survive with all this angst? There's people who talk badly about you on TV. How do you survive? How do you survive other people's opinions? I think that to me is a more practical and realistic way of dealing with life. Because I'm not saying go away from what you're doing. I'm simply saying maybe her world is a little different. Because to me, when I found my mentors, my life changed. They can save you 10 years of
Sorry, we're completely out of time. I just want to quickly get your parting shots. We'll start with you two, James, and then end with Dr. Odera before I invite Hussein to sample some of the feedback. So in short for you, it's be who you want to be, live your life, and figure it out as you go along. Or what would you want to say as your parting shot?
Yeah, to me, that should be it. People should let me live my life the way I want to live it. If I want to be a socialite, let that be. If I want to be a lawyer, let me be. As long as I'm having my own values, I'm having my own direction, I'm having those things that are directing me, we should just let me be.
Okay.
The great Mahatma Gandhi said, I would have been a Christian were it not for the Christians. So what I want to say is that there's so many ways where you can instill these values on us. But not religiously. That's even a word. Yeah. So, but not religiously. There's so many ways which you can use, but let's not follow up on religion that much, because it also has some parts. Okay, it has most parts which are leading
which you
people.
Disagree with?
Yeah, the other way.
Okay, James.
I think as I conclude, just to reiterate on what he said, Mahatma Gandhi must have missed a chance of his life, as opposed to the thief at the cross who believed in Christ Jesus. And mine is, why are we here? And the big question is there a research? Is there an indication that has been there from the previous life, or from the backside of life, from the former life, that has pointed to this time? And I would say yes. And so the solution to this current generation is an eschatological study of what has been said before, and it's in the Bible. We are in a prophetic time which has been prophesied to be a time of apostasy, increase in knowledge, while the morals are going down. Sinners will continue to be sinners. But my prayer is that we will be able to be on the right side of life, because the greatest discovery that a man can do is not to become a professor or invent bulb or light, is to know that I'm a sinner in need of a savior.
I have to stop you there. Yes. Thank you for that. Dr. Pete, very briefly, very brief, like in 10 seconds.
I think what I'd say is, so that I will not compete with what James is saying, is really this. Number one, discover your purpose. Discover who you are, what your giftings are for. Number two is put it into practice. But number three would be this, is find somebody who's gone ahead of you, who can really give you counsel, and is transparent enough to tell you, the reason I don't have an arm is because I met a lion 10 years ago and it bit off my arm. The way you're going, you will meet that same lion. And I think it is important for us to really be real with this from a leadership perspective. I think that's the other thing. Is my challenge to leaders is to live a more transparent life.
All right, fine. Thank you all so much. We could have gone on and on, but fantastic discussion and great points. Thank you all so much for coming. I don't know if we have any tweets before we invite, or we're taking a short break before Hussein comes on set and we read some of your feedback. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're now winding up on Monday Special tonight. Hussein is here. We'll sample some of your text messages after looking at this tweet that was sent to us. At Mike Muthika says, money never satisfies. The moment it becomes the main agenda to do anything, it becomes very destructive.
Catherine Mutundu, a family trainer in Nairobi, says youth have no models to learn from. Parents are not available for them, but they can afford to spend a whole day in a saloon or drinking with friends. The foundation of good values is a family guided by the word of God. And Jamil in Embakasi says, not all values maintain the real value of the human being. The best values determined for this product, that is man, is only from the manufacturer of this product. I believe it's talking about God. Failure of the product to abide by or misuse the instruction manual is not evidence of inexistence of the manufacturer or the inadequacy of the manual. That is Jamil from Embakasi.
All right, then I have two more here. You didn't say your name or where you're from, but you said values are learned, lack of appropriate role models, which we discussed, in leadership, and glorification of corruption leaves our youth vulnerable. And then finally, Bonventure from Kisumu says, the old folk script of work hard and be patient is ideal in the quest for success and wealth. However, the current crop of youth have more than that. They're not only working extra hard, but are extra smart. You couple this with the opportunities that present themselves, then you get successful youth. Marriage well is working for some of us. Okay, that's some of the feedback. Thank you so much for talking to us and for watching Monday Special tonight. I'm Janet Mbogwandishu. Have a good night.
Good night. I'm Hussein Mohammed.